Hi everybody, welcome to the Working with Wood class. This is a very, very cool technique, and props to the Cricut for even being able to cut out wood. It's like one of the #1 things people say when I say about the Cricut and wood, like, oh, I didn't know that could cut wood. We're gonna do it today and we're gonna make a very cool project. So here's what you need from your box. You're gonna need your 2 packages of basswood. You'll need the knife blade out of the box here. Your masking tape. I have a sanding block. You can either use this or not, depending on how your wood cuts out. And I just brought out my tool holder here, just so I can keep my blades all together and organized when I'm done. You're also gonna be cutting your wood on the purple mat. This is the strong grip mat, so you're gonna wanna be using the purple mat. I do want to stress that you need to use a Cricut Maker or Cricut Maker 3 for this class. So just in case you've registered for this class and you only have an Explore machine, this blade is not going to work in that machine. You need to have a Maker. The Maker series of machines has what will allow you to use this blade housing. It looks like a little gear, like right on top here. So it's got this clear sort of like protective shell on it, and then this sort of gold gear. And because it's got all these notches, that allows the Cricut Maker to really be able to press as hard as it needs to cut through the wood. So that's why when you're upgrading to a Cricut Maker, you really are getting a stronger machine. It's reserved for these heavy duty materials and these heavy duty blades. So I'm gonna go ahead and put the knife blade into the machine with the gear part. So I'm just holding on to the clear plastic and putting the gear part towards the back of the machine, and then closing that clamp B right around it. Okay, set my sanding block out of the way. I'm gonna open up my wood and bring over my strong grip mat. Careful not to scratch your wood when you're opening it up. Okay, we're gonna take one piece of wood at a time. And you do have a couple of extra pieces if, God forbid, something happens and you break one. All right, so we're gonna start by putting the wood on the mat, and then we'll go to Design Space to figure out our design. But here's what we're gonna do. We're gonna take our wood, and I'm just gonna line the wood up directly across the top. I should have mentioned off the top, you can also use your brayer for this project, and this is when you would use it. And you'll hear like those air bubbles kind of coming out and that wood sticking firmly down to that mat. Just go over this a few times. You'll know when it feels like it's stuck down. You're not seeing any air holes, it's not coming up. But just for extra protection, we're going to take that masking tape that came in your box, pull some off, and just with about 1/4 inch along the bottom, I like to just kind of press my fingernail right alongside it so it kind of makes like a little wall. That way, if the wood were to shift, it would press into the tape and not go sliding off the mat. Try to make sure your tape doesn't go off of the mat, because that's just going to interfere with the rollers. So you could use the little knife that came in your True Control weeding kit to make sure, or just make sure you line it up so it doesn't go off the mat. So I kind of lay it down with my fingernail first along the side, and then there's a little less room at the top, so just maybe don't go over quite as much. The knife blade will go through the tape anyway. And you know, it is important to note while I'm doing this, the knife blade, while it cuts through wood, it doesn't cut through in one fell swoop. So I want you to know that right from the get-go, that what's going to happen is the knife blade cuts through, but because the Cricut cuts so precise and in the same location, it actually needs multiple passes. In fact, it takes 14 passes for the knife to totally cut through the wood. So this is a project you want to do when you've got time to let it run. So I kind of expect you to work on this project throughout the weekend. This is why we're starting it early one of the nights, so that you can kind of go to bed and let it run. And then when you wake up in the morning, switch it and let it run while you listen to us again. And then in between, you could let another one go, because they all take quite a bit of time. So don't sweat it if you don't finish this weekend. No big deal, because hey, it's going to take me a while to finish this too, because it does take so many passes. But that's how you can cut through the wood. It's not like a saw or like a jigsaw where there's like, and it goes through all in one pass. It takes multiple passes. So now you know. Okay, this is nice and adhered down to the mat. I'm just going to go over this one more time because we really don't want this going anywhere. All right, set it aside and let's go to Design Space. So you're going to find the Wood Class Sunburst project, and you're going to click Customize. What that's going to do is bring up all 5 of these files. Now, we're going to start with the easiest one, which is just this rectangle, the very back of the sunburst. So if I were to press Make It right now, it would put 2 of these on each mat. But we're not totally lined up for that. That's a little more advanced than what we're doing right now. So I'm just going to press Cancel. And instead what I'm going to do is over here on the right hand side under Layers, see how when you drag your little finger there right down, you can see an eyeball kind of come up. I want you to click that eyeball on each one except for the one that we're currently working on. What that does is keeps all those other files for next time when you want to cut it, but allows us to work with just the one right now. So I'm going to press Make It. And now I've just got the one file to deal with, because this is going to take, multiple passes and quite a bit of time. I don't want to have to be like changing mats and waiting for it. I just want it to finish when it's done. So I'm going to press Continue. There's nothing else that I really need to do here. I don't need to mirror it or anything like that, so I can continue. Make sure that you've got your Cricut Maker or your Cricut Maker 3 selected. And we want to go in and select our materials. So here, it's not listed. So I'm going to press Browse All Materials there in green. And this is when all of the different materials that Cricut has to choose from start coming up. So you can kind of scroll through what there is. I'm going to go ahead and type in basswood. And this is the 1.6 millimeter. So it's giving us a little warning here to move the star wheels all the way to the right. So that's these here, these little white wheels, all the way to the right. Done. And to make sure that the material is no wider than 11 inches and that it's secured to a strong grip mat using the masking tape on all 4 sides. I can insert the mat. It's just measuring to make sure the mat is long enough. And now my play button, the go button is flashing, so I can press it and it's going to start to cut, that first cut. Now this is the easy one, it's just a rectangle, so it's a great one to start with, especially if you're feeling intimidated working with wood. But you're going to see it takes a lot of passes. Now when you're working with wood, especially if you're designing something or just choosing to cut something out, you want to make sure if you're choosing something, you're not picking something with super skinny lines. It needs to be kind of a bulky project. If the lines are too skinny, the wood is going to break. You need to have about the width of a pencil eraser, about that. Then you know that the wood is going to be pretty secure. So you're going to see on Design Space here where you are in the process. So right now we're cutting 4 of 14 passes, so I'm only 29% of the way done. Now, if you have another strong grip mat, this would be the time to prep it. If you only have the one that came in the box, no big deal, just wait for it to be done. But if you have another one, you can get it ready. So that as soon as this design is done, you can put the next one in and be ready to go and kind of keep exchanging them. This is why many people with the Cricut have lots and lots of mats. And not to worry if it goes over the tape a little bit. Okay, so the wood is ready. Eject it. So you can see it cut through my tape here, no big deal. Stayed nice and secure, that's what's important. Just peel that tape off. Okay, now don't just flip up your wood. We want to make sure it doesn't break. So I'm going to suggest peeling the mat away from the wood. Leave the wood standing tall. Now we're going to keep this for later. So this is the back of our wood project, and you can see it barely needs any sanding. I've got a little bit of tape there. So if you want, you can just smooth out the edges. It doesn't really need that much, but I would hold off and do the sanding while it's cutting so you're not wasting any time. So I'm going to set that aside, get my next mat ready with my next piece of wood, and I'm going to go back to my canvas. So I press done, and now I'm going to just take that one off the screen. So press the little eyeball again and unclick the next one in the series. So you can see there's all of these still to come. So we're going to start with the next easiest one. So I'm just going to make sure we're not seeing the other ones. So we're going to cut this one next. So I'm just going to press make it, continue, and I'm going to type in basswood again. And 16th. Make sure your mat goes underneath those white guides right at the side, because that can really mess up your mat if you don't do that. So basically just load it, let it measure, and press go. Please feel free to pause the video and get your own going, and I'll meet you back here once this one has finished cutting. Okay, I've been letting this run. You're seeing by now that it's taking, sometimes upwards of, well, this one, 53 minutes to go through all of those 14 passes. So again, remember, you can work on this as the night and the weekend goes on. So I've pulled this one that just finished out of the machine, and I've loaded up my next layer. So it's starting to go. I still have 46 minutes on that one. But while I'm doing that, I'm going to show you how to remove the pieces from the mat. So have your sanding block kind of handy. The pieces should pop right out. I mean, with 14 passes, geez. There will be a couple pieces that you might want to sand, just a little bit of like jaggedy edges, that kind of thing. Again, put the mat up and peel the mat back off. Some of it will just come right out. Just be careful with it. Pop it out. Keep this for later. There's still tons of good wood that can be used here. And then just pop out the little pieces. And now I still have there's, a little corner piece here that has a little jagged edge. There's a little bit of an edge. I'm going to take my sanding block to that. The other thing that we could have included in the box, although I didn't really even think of it until right now, is even just like a wooden emery board might help you get right inside those little edges. But you can kind of get the corners in if you want to make sure all of it is nice and smooth. I'm not going to sweat it too much, and I certainly don't want to sand it so much that I risk breaking it. So just sand so that everything is laying, you know, flat and there isn't any kind of jaggedy pieces coming out, but it's pretty good right out of the mat. It's not too bad. Try not to sand or do anything like this over top of your actual strong grip mat, because all of that dust is just going to stick directly onto it, and we don't want that. We don't want this debris sticking to our mat. It's bad enough when it comes off the mat anyway, so just make sure you do all of this somewhere else. Now, it's still got 4 passes left, but I can start building up and getting a look at what it's gonna look like and go through some of the options for assembling this. So I've got my base piece here, then I've got the next kind of thickest one. So a few little pieces in this layer that needed a bit more buffing. So again, I'm just going to remind you to feel free and pause, take the time you need, or watch this until it gets to the next part and then pause it, and then you go ahead back and finish what you need to and pick it back up again. Like I said, there's no way you'll be able to finish this class in the amount of time that the class is, because of just how long it takes the Cricut to cut wood, how many passes. You know, and that's something to keep in mind with some of these thicker materials. We're always hearing like, oh, the Cricut can cut this or this many layers of that, and it's true, but it's not all in one fell swoop. So that's just something to keep in mind. Okay, I'm gonna avoid blowing this, even though I almost did that. I do not want that to go in the machine or on that cutting mat, so I'd rather it on the floor. I can sweep it up later. All right, I've got some layers here. So layer 1, layer 2, layer 3. Ooh, I love it when you can kind of see it starting to come together. So we've got lots of options here. If you have paint at home or a stain at home you'd like to use, or a varnish, you can certainly do that. We couldn't get the quantity, like the hundreds and hundreds of bottles that we needed to include anything but what we included in the box, or else we might have. Plus we thought, you know what, it looks really good just as blank, like fresh wood too. So I'm okay with it like this, but I wanted to give you a couple of options for how you could assemble it together. I'm still waiting on my last piece there, but I certainly can start with the first 3. You could take the tape runner that came in your box. It's very sticky. So long as you make sure that you are putting lots of adhesive on, you can stick that directly to the wood, and then again directly to the wood. I'd also urge you to consider some of the foam dots that we included in your kit. And I'll just show you what that looks like. This is going to give you, I'm using just a large one here. Make sure you put it on the wood, the back of the wood that's going on, not on the wood below, so that you're just ensuring that you don't see any of these dots. I'm just going to show you what this looks like. It's a little bit more of a shadowed effect. It's going to make your project that much thicker. So I'm just going to show you here what I mean by that. See how now, when I lay this down on the back wood, how you can kind of see the shadowing because it sits up that much higher. That has a really nice look. And so if I were to do that again, on this one, you again can see the shadowing. Once that goes on there, you're going to get that much more shadowing even. And then as the layers continue to build up, it kind of really jumps out that way. That's just a different look. So you decide which one you like the best, and you can assemble it any way you like. Just remember, these things are, like once you get them on there, you can remove them for now because I haven't really pushed it down, but once they get on there, they're extremely sticky. So be sure you know what technique you're going to do before you do it. So I'm going to do that technique. I'm going to use the foam dots so that it's extra shadowy. So I'm just going to put a few more on the back of my wood here. And then each of these foam dots has a paper, so there's adhesive on both sides. You got to peel that paper off next. Sort of nice to work on the layers as your next layers are cutting. Although I got to say, I did like let it cut and then walked away from the last one. Let it just cut on its own. Okay, so then just set this up on your mat or on your table and just get it firmly in place. Okay, next one, I'm going to do the same. I'm just going to make sure though that I'm putting it on the back of the top layer, not on this, because then I'll risk seeing it. You just want to make sure that you don't see it. And just kind of space them out. Try to use some of the bigger dots. There's lots in the package, so I would use some of the bigger dots for these bigger layers and save the smaller dots for smaller things. Like the very smallest ones, maybe a little more in the corners. All right, pull the papers off. All right, once you've got all the papers off, the next one, again, just make sure things are lining up nice and flush. And then press it down. Don't press too hard. If you want to make sure you're getting nice, even pressure, but you don't want to snap anything. All right, so you can kind of see those foam dots in between. Now, I just need to wait. I have 7 more passes, 35 minutes remaining on this last cut. So I've gotten as far as I can. So I'm gonna even pause, wait for it to finish, and then I'll meet you back here. Okay, so once you've got your last panel all cut out and you've got the pieces all off, we're left with this extra leftover wood. Remember I said to keep those because we're going to use them to create a little box to go around our piece so that we don't see all of those inside. We don't see the guts. We don't see the foam dots. It is going to kind of finish it nicely. And we're not giving you a file. Instead, we're going to help you create this on your own. Because if you're working with wood at this point, you are ready and should learn in Design Space how to create your own cuts using your own measurements for things that you're designing. So this will help you get there, and it's very easy. We're going to use free shapes that are available and the leftover wood. So I've got this one still right on the mat. But I'm going to show you how to do it no matter where you have it placed on the mat. So let's go to Design Space and call up a blank canvas. So nothing on your screen here. And the first thing we're going to want to do is click on Shapes, and let's just choose the square shape and just get it onto your mat. And now we've got it here on our canvas, not our mat. Eventually it'll be on our mat. So it comes in as a 2 by 2 inch square. And if you pull on it, it, continues and remains a square. But what we need are some long rectangles around here. And we're going to design this and get it going and then finish assembling our front piece just so that we can keep our machine working because it takes so many passes on the wood. So just stand by with your piece. We are going to get to that. Okay, so you have the square here. And it's going to maintain the equal sides unless we press this little lock right here, which unlocks the equality. It unlocks it. This now allows you to pull it in all kinds of different shape directions so that we can get a rectangle. And what we want to do is measure out how long and how thick our project is once we've got all the foam dots on it. And this might slightly differ for each of you, which is why we're going to have you design this yourself and sort of take your skills to the next level. We can give you a rough estimate on what we're cutting, but I do want you to measure it. So once you get your second last layer on, let's bring it back over, and you've got it all sanded and ready to go onto your piece. So I'm going to flip it, and for this we're using the smallest dots. And just make sure they're in all sort of the pressure point places, like the corners, and just sort of evenly distribute them. We don't want to see them though. So if it's too close on the top corner, just put it a little further down because we don't want to see it. And these foam dots are a good reference because when you're cutting wood, you don't want to cut it much smaller than what this foam dot is. Otherwise, we just risk it snapping and breaking. We did have like a 6th layer that we tried to make even smaller on this because we designed this file, but it was just too skinny. It just kept breaking the wood. So we just went with 5 layers. It looks great. It looks great. You just don't want to push it too far with the wood or you end up just wasting your product. Okay, so once you feel like you've got them sort of evenly distributed in kind of the thickest spots, the thicker the spots, the better. But you also want to make sure that there's no place that's going to kind of collapse. You want it fairly even. Okay, and then take all the little backs off, of course. Okay. And then get that centered on there. Oh, it looks so good. I love it in the all like natural wood. Like that shadowed effect looks so nice, layering all back, the tone on tone. But it is unfinished. You can see the inside of your creation. So let's go back, take our mat or a ruler or whatever you have to measure. And let's see here. So if I'm measuring, this, of course, we know is exactly 8 inches long. So it's 8 inches long on both the top and the bottom. So the width is going to be 0.75. I'm just going to type that in, 0.75. And then our height, because it's going to have a top and a bottom piece, is going to be slightly longer than the wood that we're using on the inside. And 2 of those together measures 7/8 of an inch. So we're going to add 7/8 of an inch to 4 inches. So that's 4 inches and 7/8. So I'm just dragging this over to 4.125. So I've got it in at 4.128 by 0.794. Design Space does alter the numbers when you're dragging it so that it makes the dimensions a little easier to cut. So just get as close as you can. We can always sand down to make it match perfectly. Now, I also want to be able to make use of this wood that we've got here. And so I want it to lay on the mat perfectly so I can take advantage of these scrap pieces. So because I've just taken that one out of the machine, it's already taped down. I'm going to go ahead and just tape this side too. Just because anywhere there's a bit of vulnerability in the wood where it could slide, we want to make sure that's where we're taping so that it's nice and strong. So right now on the mat, this is laying, I'm just going to move this so we can see it just to be sure. This is laying at the 5-inch mark. So I'm going to bring down my long and lay it right across that 5-inch line. And then I'm going to bring this one over and I'm going to turn it so it's going to cut right beside it at the end. And now I want these to cut like this on the mat. That way we're making the use of the space that we've got here. I want to make sure I'm leaving a pretty good gap between the two. Otherwise, if I put these right together and tried to conserve that wood, eventually so many passes on both sides of the wood would make this start to split. Like I said, those foam dots, that's a really good indicator of how much that smallest one is, how wide you should keep a space between your wood pieces. So I'll leave a little gap there, about 1/4 inch. And now I'm going to highlight these and I'm going to attach them by using the little paperclip key at the bottom. That way, I know when this gets sent to the mat, it's going to cut exactly there on the mat. So when I press make it, on the mat, it's lined up. You can see just above the 9. And when I'm looking at my page, right above the 9, I've got space. And then right across, right below 4 and above 5, I've also got space. Now, if you needed to move it down on the mat, you've got that ability to edit right from the mat too. So I could pull it down if I was a little worried it was too high. So I'm just going to pull it down a smidge just to make sure. And then I'm going to press continue. Make sure this is all still nice and taped down. I'm going to browse my materials again and pick basswood. Same wood. Make sure you don't have any wood pieces or anything left over from the previous cuts in your machine. It's going underneath the guides, good. Just gonna be careful none of this debris, leftover stuff goes in the machine. And you're gonna cut this twice because we need it one for the top and the side, one for the bottom and the side. So you're gonna use 2 of your leftover pieces. There we go. Now this won't take quite as long as the sunburst because they're just cutting squares, but it still does take 14 passes. So we have to wait for it to cut out. All right, so I'm gonna cut it out and I'll meet you right back here. Okay, so I've got my wood cut out. I've got my second one on, starting to cut for the next side. So just like you did with the earlier one. Okay. So just be sure you're not breaking anything. Pull the mat away, that's easy. But I've still got lots of wood left here. You never know the little spots that you'll want to cut out. So I'm still going to keep this for something else. And I'll start assembling while that one finishes cutting. So if you have school glue or anything like that at home, you can use that too. I'm just going to use the tape runner that came in the box because it's quite sticky and quite permanent. And all I'm going to do here is run the tape runner really generously along one side of the wood. So there's the one side. There we go. And then just fit it right on the top. And you're going to want to assemble the top and bottom pieces first. And just, with a little bit of force, hold it down. We're trying not to have a gap in between the wood pieces. If you're finding you're getting a gap, see, it's very hard to come off, but you can eventually pull it off if you really, really try. You can go along here too if you like. It's not going to go down into the wood at all, but just make sure it's all covered. What we're trying to avoid is any stringy bits getting on the front. So you could take your sanding block, if you're finding you're getting a bit of glue on the front, and just sand away from the front or away from the back so any of that glue comes off on the sanding block and not towards the front of the project. We don't want any of those stringy bits in front. And just centering that and pressing down. And I'm going to use my brayer here. Now, carpenters, if they were gluing something together, would probably use wood glue or white glue. If you have that and you want to use it, you can. They might also clamp this, but we're not exactly carpenters yet. We're getting there. So instead, I'm just adding a bit of pressure and making sure that all sides are evenly stuck down. And I'm not hanging off one end more than another. Okay, and now I can add the bottom side. If you have any glue squeezing out the front, just use your sanding block and it'll take it off. My top on this side's hanging over just a little smidge, so I'm just going to give it a little sand while I'm waiting for that one to be done. Oh, it's done. All right, so now I've got my bottom. And then the side piece, because they're longer, can go over top of the top piece, just boxing out your actual project. And if it's feeling like one side's a little bit sticking out, just take your sandpaper to it. Or you can round the corners a little bit so that everything is sitting nice and flush. And there's a look at your final sunburst. I love the wood on wood tones. I love that I was able to create this all on my own with Cricut without any tools needed in the garage or anything like that. It's very cool that we can cut with wood. Now, we do know it takes a while, many passes, but I do think the result is well worth it. And look at the great layers that we're able to get in there. Looks very cool. So thank you so much for taking the chance and going on this woodworking journey with your Cricut and me. And I appreciate you guys taking this woodworking class, because honestly, I've learned so much. I hope you've learned so much. And if you have any other questions, please just leave them in the group. Have fun.